You mentioned obviously Will and Gus to be able to get them back to back last summer and set the tone for the class and fill two positional needs right off the bat. How much did that kind of help with the planning?
It helps when you get your quarterback early for sure. Like that's the one position that it's hard, if you're coming down to the last week of recruiting. A lot of guys want to know who their quarterback's going to be in their class. That's a key component. And, from Will's standpoint, he committed really early. He was very solid throughout. He had a lot of people trying to get him to change his mind, and his loyalty was very impressive. Obviously in a day and age where you see a lot of people flipping, particularly here in the last month at the quarterback position. There was a lot of moving chairs there throughout college football. With Gus, obviously that story goes back to flipping him from another local school, and he's a great fit here, man. I always felt when I first got to know Gus that this was the right school for him. You could tell he's a tough blue collar guy. He loves contact. He's physical. I mean, he's been at every game we've played for 2 years. I mean, and getting around his family, it's a great fit. And so getting those two guys that just fit our culture, fit this place, they want to be here, and then having them help get to know the other recruits and be a part of it is great momentum. And it does help when there are needs in your class, but more importantly, when they're guys that quarterback, I mean, that is a critical piece of your class, and getting him as early as we did played a big role.
Noah?
Yeah, Coach, you touched on it, but what sets a guy like Spike apart as a high school center coming into, the college level now?
Well, his father was a really good football player, so he grew up in a football family and had been around the game his whole life. He has um, really athletic ability. I mean, you see him play both ways on film. So he's very athletic, which for the center in our offense, we like running outside zone. We need our center to be able to get up and go. But he is physical too now. I mean, he can move people off the ball. He plays with a mindset that I like, a finishing mindset for an offensive lineman. That's important. He's not a position blocker. He likes displacing other people. And he is ultra competitive. Big personality. He's going to be a lot of fun to be around. I know from a media standpoint, as you guys get to know him, you'll enjoy his personality. So just one of those magnetic guys. And, I told him he has the stuff, that leaders are made of. And he's a guy that if he does the right things, he could be captain material. That's the kind of personality that when you meet him, you feel. And so your center, like your Mike linebacker, there are two guys that have immediate platforms to lead. And when you have a guy that has that kind of charisma, it helps.
Rob?
Yeah, I have two questions. First of all, the tight end position obviously has evolved in our lifetimes. And what is it you're looking for when you recruit the tight ends at NC State?
There's really two types of tight ends. There's the hybrid that can be in and out of the box. You can put him in the slot. You've seen that over the years with us, from Jalen Samuels to Kerry Angeline, and now with Justin Jolie. And then you have your more traditional inline tight ends that put their hand in the dirt, still run routes, catch balls, but they're more involved in the line of scrimmage play. And so those body types sometimes are different than the other. Sometimes that body type's a bigger, thicker, sturdier type guy. Obviously, if you can get a guy that can do it all, that's your dream for that position. But that's why we call them a Y and an H. They are a little bit different athletically at times. A lot of times your H is a guy that, in really both positions, those guys usually are pretty good basketball players. They have good spatial awareness. But your H's are usually guys that are, a little bit more on the receiver athletic side. Some of them might have just played receiver in high school, and they were bigger bodied guys that, you can fill out and grow into that spot.
And that's actually a great lead to my next question. You mentioned basketball, and you also recruited a tackle, I believe, that played basketball. That's sort of changed in my lifetime as well. It used to be they isolated on one sport. Now, when you're recruiting, do you know these guys wrestle, play basketball, track and field, things like that? Is that a plus in the recruiting process?
Yeah, I think I've talked about that for years. I like multi-sport athletes. To me, they're training other muscle groups. They're competing year round. And so they go from competing in one sport to competing in another sport, and some of them 3 sports. So their competitive spirit is really edgy. But playing basketball, man, it's running, it's changing direction, it's jumping, it's teamwork, setting picks, setting up plays, understanding leverage on bodies. I think wrestling's one of the best sports in the world for football players, guys that are good at that, to know how to use their hands better, know how to feel momentum of another person and use it against them, and how to play with, that lower body and core strength. They have great grip strength, guys that wrestle, so I think those 2 sports I love when I see that. And you also know they're active guys. They're not just going home after school playing video games all day. Like, they're leaving school, going to practice, and they're working. They're getting coached. They're learning values. They're learning how to be a good teammate, learning how to work with other people. And so all those things to me matter. I love that. And that's not going to change for me. I know it has, to your point, changed in society. There's a lot more one sport athletes out there, but from a coach's side, we love seeing that.
Ethan?
Hey, Coach, this is the second cycle in a row. Y'all have signed multiple 4-star offensive linemen. And then in both classes, there were a couple linemen that were just below that 4-star threshold. I just wanted to get your thoughts on what's helping y'all recruit that position group at such a high level.
That's an interesting question, because I don't really care how many stars they have. I mean, I know the recruits do. To me, it's more about what fits our needs. And if we see them play live and we know that they're guys that can do that, I think, Garrett Tujay is a really good recruiter. He works his butt off at it. He's a good relationship builder. He's been able to, put a lot of guys in the NFL. And then you go to our pedigree. I think it's 17 or 18 linemen now, when you look at O-line, D-line combined, that are active in the NFL from NC State. So there is a track record, blueprint of how we've done this here, and how we've done it with 3-star, 4-star, sometimes no star guys, and developed them into good linemen on the O-line and on the D-line.
James?
Dave, Will Wilson, big frame. I wanted to ask you about his running ability and the dual threat position, and just kind of in college football, how important maybe it is to have a quarterback who can run the football some.
Yeah, it helps. I mean, it makes all 11 players over there have to defend the run. And blocking scheme wise, you can get a hat on a hat when you do that. Obviously, there's some ad lib things, which you saw with CJ this year as the year went on. He started scrambling and rushing for positive yards, and had 2 rushing touchdowns scrambling in a game. And so, yeah, I think that part of it, it's nice to have in your offensive system. You can do it with the Wildcat, which you've seen us do at times too, but it's better when it's the guy that can actually throw a post over your head. And now you got to worry about him running a quarterback ISO, or quarterback power, a quarterback counter, a zone read keep, a quarterback draw, whatever it may be. And you have your traditional pass game that he can manage as well. So our offense will continue to grow and evolve, but having the mobility that our quarterbacks now have, it does put more stress on the defense.
Corey?
Obviously, it's impactful for you guys to have bowl practices for the current players and for the players that you'll have on the roster in the future. But how many of the guys do you expect from this class to be able to participate in some of those, and how big of a advantage does that be as well?
I'm sorry, I couldn't understand your question. It's pretty muffled.
JC?
Let's try that again. Oh, can you
Go
hear me
ahead.
now?
Yeah, go
Yeah, I
ahead.
can hear you. That's better.
Okay. So my question was looking at the bowl practices and how potentially impactful they can be for younger players and the guys that you could have on the roster, and who might some of those players be from this class as well.
Are you talking about the bowl practices and who's here on the team now, or about the signing class?
Yes, the bowl practices.
And the question is what?
how potentially impactful it could be to have some of the guys on this current, not only the current roster, but also some of these players from this class, and who might some of those players be that can be added to that bowl practice?
Yeah. Well, we're just talking bowl practice. We're talking about the guys that are here now. And so, as far as adding signees to the bowl practices, we're not there yet. We're working through that. And there's a lot of timing in that. So I don't want to speak on something that isn't finalized. But I'm excited about bowl practices. I mean, all the kids on our team need to improve, every single guy. And talking to the players, I've had about 60 exit meetings so far this week with guys and still have many to go. They're excited. They want to know where we're playing. They want to know who we're playing. They want to get out there and compete. They want to get better. The red shirt guys in particular, they got a taste of it in our 2 bye weeks because we had 2 developmental practices those weeks of getting more reps in our system, not just being on a scout team. They're excited to show their improvement, from the course of the season and the gains they've made in the weight room. And we're excited to watch them. I think it's really, as a coach, great because when you get into the bowl and you get to rep all these guys, Jonathan Paylor and Brody Barnhart, all these younger players that have been on the scout team that you have high hopes for, Ronnie Royal, and keep going. At the end of the bowl, you get to give them some information. Like, here's the things that we saw in these practices that when you come back, we got to focus on these things so that when we start spring practice, you've improved. And now you go through spring practice and you give them the same input with different information on how to get better so that when we come back in August, they have improvement again. So it's a developmental window that has really important information at the end of it for the player and for the coach. And I'm, thankful that we have this opportunity, look forward to it. And I know the team does as well.
Thank
Jason,
you.
Two unrelated but important topics. What is it that goes into picking a player host when you have official visitors? I know Brandon Cisse, Michael Tate, Joshua Four, a lot of the players, recruits raved about those guys. What is that matchmaking like when you have that type of visit? And then the second part, so much of recruiting is now taking visits in June, and then they commit, and then you try to hold on or build a relationship further. Is having so much condensed in June, is that a good thing for the calendar? Or
Yeah, I need like
like
eight.
that?
I need like 8 hours to tell you how screwed up our calendar is. But as far as hosting goes, you try to match guys that you think they're going to get along with, and if they can be in the same side of the ball or position, great. Sometimes not. Sometimes they know someone on our team or they're from the same area and they've got similar, teams they played against, and so there's commonalities. Sometimes it's availability too. If we're bringing them in on a game weekend, we're not going to be able to have a host be a guy that's playing in the game because he's tied up. But you'll always try to match, guys that they're going to fit. They're going to be able to feel comfortable with, and sometimes it's intimidating. For a high school player, they come in, they're hosted by a college guy, and you want them to get along. You want them to feel like he can ask them questions, and you want that match to be what that can be. And so, for us, it's a process, and our kids do a great job hosting, man. They're really good at it. They understand the value of it. They know that these guys could be their teammates, and they do a good job reporting back to us. Like, okay, coach, that guy's a great fit. I would love to have him as a teammate. And those are the kinds you want to hear, and sometimes I don't know if he's going to fit in here, man. Like, he didn't even talk the whole time he's here. He wasn't that interested in football. Like, you want to hear what those guys have to say, and so we do value that piece of it. With regard to the June official visits, I thought we were going to have a end of June signing date, beginning of July. That was kind of what everyone said last year. We thought that was going to be passed. And in that situation, I think the June visits would have been fantastic. Let us go meet them in the spring, watch them practice. The ones that fit, let them come back on official visits in June. If they're ready to commit and sign, let them do that. And then they can go through their senior year, committed, signed, and we can do the same and know how many spaces we have left. but that got tabled. And so, to your point, you put all this legwork into it, and so do they, and then they make decisions because they're worried about places filling up, and then you don't sign them until December. And now we don't even get to go out. I don't even get to do home visits in December anymore. So it's really strange how the calendar's put together. I don't think it's very functional. I don't think there's a lot of common sense in it. I hope that they revise it. You hear all the time that they're in these committees to revise the calendar, and sometimes we get input, sometimes we don't. But the way it's currently set up, it just doesn't make a lot of sense.
Brian Murphy.
Thanks, Coach. I had a couple questions about roster management. With the 105 limit, how did that change, how you're handling walk-ons or how many kids you wanted to bring in this class? And then secondly, you talk about these long relationships you develop with these guys, and then we see the transfer portal where after a year or 2 years, they're gone. How does that impact how much time you're putting in to these recruits, knowing, where in the past you would have them for 4 or 5 years, and now it may be a much shorter window?
Yeah, no, it's changed a lot. I think we put a lot of time into them. It doesn't change how we look at them when they get here. I mean, I never sign a kid with the expectation he's going to leave. I sign him with the expectation that I'm going to graduate this player. I'm going to develop this player. I'm going to see this player reach his goals as a student athlete. And in some cases, that's what happens. And in some cases today, it doesn't. I wish they could stay longer than a year. I feel like the way that this thing's set up now, it really lends to not facing adversity for some people. I think the portal is really good for guys that have been in a program for a long period of time. Some of them even graduated, and they're not playing very much. And shoot, we all want these guys to play. Like, that's why you recruited them, and for whatever reason, after 3 or 4 years, they're not playing. I mean, we want the same thing they do. We want them to turn around at the end of their career with a college degree and feel like they've got everything they could out of it. And if playing time's not part of that equation at your school after that period, I mean, I'm 100% behind them going to find a place where they can be starters. And we've had some guys do that, and I'm happy for them. I am, but you never make decisions. Like, I would tell a recruit, don't commit to a school, don't sign with a school with the thought, well, if it doesn't work out, I'll just transfer. Like, to me, that's a recipe for not making it. It's a recipe for failure. You got to go in all in, and it's no different for me as a coach. I don't sign a kid and say, well, if he's not good enough in a year, I'm going to tell him to leave. Like, that's not how we do business here. We want these guys to be a part of this place, to get their blood in the bricks, to go through adversity, to develop, grow, and succeed, And so hopefully that's what the majority of the guys will do. Some of their timelines to get on the field aren't realistic at times, not only because they haven't developed enough, but sometimes they're just behind a really good player, and that happens. It does. And so, I think people get really like, oh, he's going in the portal. There's a lot of reasons behind some of these decisions, and some of them will probably never be told. But I look at all these openings that you end up with, whether it's a player leaves for the NFL early, a player graduates and runs out of eligibility, or a player decides to go to another school. Every one of these opportunities is that. It's an opportunity for a young man to join our team because someone else has left. And so, we look for the new person to come in and take advantage of what we have here at NC State and try to help him reach his goals.
And then sorry.
Go ahead, Brian.
And then on the roster management part, how does the 105 impact what you guys are doing and how many you're bringing in?
It's tricky because it's not final. And, we've been told that we're going to be at 105, but we won't be at 105 officially until it's rubber stamped at the legislative level. And so you have to have a plan A and a plan B currently, because like I said earlier, sometimes these decisions at the last minute get tabled. And the last thing you want to do is run off your walk-ons, cut them all, and then find out you're going to be able to be at 125 again, and they're going to wait a year, So if we do end up at 105, we're not allowed to be at 105 until the summer. And so you're still operating from now until then like it's a 85 scholarship with your walk-on program, knowing, and we've told our walk-ons this, knowing that it could change. We could go from 85 scholarships. We're at 125 was our roster, and we're going back to 105. And so some of the walk-ons, won't be allowed to stay whenever that legislation is approved and we get to that magical date. And so they know that, be here for the winter program, then go through spring ball and compete with the mindset that they're trying to get themselves into that 105 roster if that's where it ends up. And so for us, you're kind of, if we end up with extra scholarships, here's the guys, but you can't be at 105 in January. You're only allowed to be at 85 in January. And that's where this gets tricky because the signing date was today, December. And it's tough, second signing date's in February after we've already started classes, so, and then you have your portal guys in the middle of that and after that in May. And we look forward to knowing as head coaches what our roster size is. I think that's going to be great to actually know that officially and exactly when we can add those guys so that we can make better plans. This has been a really challenging year, and I feel bad for the guys that are in the walk-on positions because, it's been a huge asset to NC State's football program. It's been a huge asset to Wisconsin and Nebraska and Iowa and teams that really value Kansas State, their walk-on programs, and I mean, I've had over 30 walk-ons earn a scholarship at NC State in my tenure, and a lot of those guys have played. Some of them are playing in the NFL. Thayer Thomas, guys that came in as walk-ons are, our starting punter right now. Caden Incaster was a walk-on. Trent Gill, starting in the NFL, was a walk-on. I mean, when I was at Wisconsin, J.J. Watt came in as a walk-on. These guys he's an NFL Hall of Famer. And so if those programs are taken away, I don't understand how that fits student athlete welfare. It doesn't fit student athlete welfare, but I guess it's okay in this case that we take opportunity away from student athletes. I'm not sure how they resonate that, but they did. And we're just sitting here waiting, And as a coach, my job is to have a plan if it passes and a plan if it doesn't. And so that's what we have.
Jaden?
Dave, you briefly mentioned AJ Prim, but I want to say he doubled his tackles output this past season from his freshman season. What does that say about the kind of guy that you're getting and the effort that you hope to see from him?
Well, we expect him to come in and compete, and you would hope that at any program, first-year starter that becomes a second-year starter improves his statistics, right? And from a lineman standpoint in particular, he got bigger, he got stronger, he played with more confidence, he made more plays. And, there's going to be a transition from junior college to Power 4 for him that he's going to have to adjust. And I'm excited to get him in our weight program, excited to get him in our nutrition program. He's got a frame. We're going to be able to do some really good things with his body and get him even more confident, because when you're playing and you feel that you're getting stronger, you're getting faster, you're getting more flexible, you play with more confidence. And so for AJ, I'm excited to get him here and get our hands on him, get started working with him. And he loves football. And so it'll be good to get him in that room. It's a good room. I really like the returning defensive linemen that we have, their attitudes and all that. So it'll be fun to get him in there with them.
All right, 3 more questions. Ethan?
Coach, over the past few recruiting cycles, y'all have kept a lot of in-state receiver talent home. Drell's obviously the most recent example of that. And I was just wondering how much pride y'all take in that as a staff and how important those recruiting battles are to this program.
Yeah, they're critical, man. I mean, this. I take a lot of pride in letting these in-state players know that. Like, we love keeping kids home. We do. I think it's easier for them. It's easier for their families. We have a higher success rate with in-state players. We've put more players from North Carolina in the NFL than any team in college football, and it's not even close. And there's a reason for that. They have success here. And there's been a lot of good players leave. And for whatever reason, they get lost in the shuffle. And as you saw last year, several of them left and came back because they saw our guys having success and they wanted to be a part of it. And you see it. You see it with Noah having success. You see it with Hollywood having success. And so I think there's a storyline out there. These in-state guys know that they can stay home, let their parents be close, and have an opportunity to reach their goals, to win games, to go to bowl games, and be in a program that does put players in the NFL and develop them. And so we take a lot of pride in that. And, you know, there's always been really good skill in this state. And it's no different this year. And Jarrell's a guy that we had high on our board from the beginning. It was a good fit. Really felt great about him. His high school coach just raved about him. Once we got his family here, you could tell that they were a good fit with us as well. And so that's fun, you know, when you get to meet the whole group and you can tell that this is going to work because of the way they've raised them and how they value hard work, how they value accountability, how hard they want him to train, and, you know, how they want us to coach him. It was a good fit. And so we'll continue, you know, down that path. And, you know, some years you end up with a lot more in-state players than others. Obviously, as this thing's evolved, more and more kids are leaving the state, getting a lot of money sometimes to do so. And so that part of it's evolving, you know, as we get into this revenue sharing and things change even again, it'll be interesting to see how that changes things.
James?
Dave, I think I saw where Kobe Cronk had maybe 25 sacks as a senior. I know in the press release, they had him with 50 and 34 career games. Could you just talk about that skill set of his? And is that maybe something that could get him on the field? You don't see a number like that.
Yeah. No,
often.
he is put together, man. I mean, he is really developed physically. He's tough. He's a kid you love his motor. He's going to play harder than the guys across from him on a lot of snaps. And because of that, he'll get a lot of strain getting off of blocks. We call it block destruction, but destroying blocks and getting to the ball carrier. He's really strong. He's quick. He's got a knack for it. He knows how to use his hands. And so, yeah, we value not just his ability to rush the passer, but how tough he is.
Thanks, Dave.
All right, Noah, you want to finish this up?
Sounds good. Yeah, you talked about roster management. The portal opens next week, and then you've got a month until class starts. You know, what's your approach kind of through the next month of looking to fill out kind of the roster before their spring semester, you know, gets going?
Well, it starts with what I'm doing now. You're talking to your current team and, you know, about everything. But part of what you're talking about is next season, you know, and where their minds are at and if they're happy where they are, if they're coming back. And then you get a feel for what your roster is going to be. You had 17 players today. So that update on our depth chart is real now. It's not in flux. They've signed. And then you can see if anybody's leaving. And then, okay, well, here's some needs that we now have. And maybe we can address them in the portal. Maybe we can't. Sometimes it's going to be the second signing date. You know, we may not feel like we need an older player in that room. So there's more kids not signing in the early signing date than I expected. So there will be a bigger pool in February than there was last year. And so you may see more high school signees in the second window than you did last year. I'm pretty sure you will. And so each team will be different, you know, in how they address their needs, whether they want to get a guy that's got 5 years to play for, or whether they only need a guy that's got 1 year because they got some good young players that they just want an older player in the room with. So we'll have to address that. It is a changing number. You know, you have to see where things end up. And sometimes, unfortunately, it happens due to injury. And that happens in some of these postseason games. And so you have to see if your roster changes there. And sometimes it happens in the offseason programs, you know. It's a evolving number. And there's more outflow from programs than there ever has been with 2 portal windows. And then you have the 2 high school signing dates, and then you have this moving target with when you can add players that go into the portal. And some of them are grad transfers, some of them are first-year guys, some of them are third-year guys. And yeah, roster management has become the number one challenge. Moving target too, for coaches. And it's the science, and there's a lot of communication, and there's a lot of behind-the-scenes study and film by our staff on what we need, and if these guys go in, are they good enough?
And just as a quick follow-up, you talked about adding an older player maybe to a position. Do you feel comfortable where your quarterback room sits with what you have with adding Will today, or do you anticipate trying to look for an older guy to join that room?
We're really excited about our quarterback room. You know, I feel like with CJ, the experience he gained this year, the way he's playing and leading, Lex Thomas has really improved. You know, came in injured and has gone through a long rehab process. And this year he got better and better and better. He has best week last week of practice. So I was really excited. So we feel good about the three quarterbacks that are here. Doesn't mean you don't keep looking, you know, for guys that may or may not fit what you need, but it's not like it was the last couple of years. We're not trying to find, you know, a portal starter or anything like that. You know, we love the fact that we've got CJ with Lex, and those two guys get along really well. And Will coming in the building here mid-year, it's a much better position than we've been in. And I love going into the offseason knowing who my starter is. I mean, it's a great feeling. Had it with Jacoby Brissett, had it with Ryan Finley, had it with Devin Leary. It's your off season's different when you know going into that next phase who that guy is that you're looking at. And CJ's ready to run the show.